This podcast was produced by Shaun Weston Media.
Welcome to episode 26 of the Media Will Eat Itself podcast. It's another season of interviews about how modern professional people work within modern media. And in this episode, Alexandra Moxin and I talk about a number of topics, including writing, podcasting, self-promotion, project management, and leadership. Alexandra is CEO and founder of Advanced Tech Media and produces the Advanced Tech podcast. We get stuck in the weeds a little bit in a fascinating discussion about artificial intelligence, which I hope you stay tuned for, as it may affect how we approach the media industry over the next few years. Let's get on with the show. So, Alexandra, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. It was lovely to invite you, actually. You're dialing in from Vancouver, so quite a long way for this podcast, actually. And you are a woman of many talents, most of which revolve around technology. So as a helpful starting point for our listeners, would you explain what you're currently working on and a little bit about the podcast that you produce that runs alongside your company?
Sure. So currently I'm CEO and founder of Advanced Tech Media, and Advanced Tech Media is focused on emerging tech. So everything from artificial intelligence to Bitcoin to distributed systems, you name it. Anything that's really at the forefront of technology. The idea is to talk to experts in the field, and not self-proclaimed experts, but people that have the grounding, people that are building versus just talking about great new ideas. We do talk to some founders in the startup space, and I definitely don't want to exclude those people. There's some really great ideas out there. But when we're talking to people that are really creating the tech of tomorrow, which is one of the taglines of the show, I want to be speaking with people that have, a solid grounding, solid education, and they come from a place of knowledge and experience.
Right, so we're talking about official, qualified experts here, not pretend experts.
Well, and I mean, somebody can be absolutely brilliant at 16 and have no formal classical training. That's definitely the case, but that tends to be the exception.
So you started at Adapt Tech Labs in 2019, and that's an accelerator program as well, isn't it?
It is. That's sort of something that's been put on hold. So Adapt Tech Group is a company I used to work for. I was previously Vice President of Business Development, and it was a collaboration between the CEO, an outside consultant, and myself. And it's still really early on in conceptual phase. I'm not certain that will be seeing any ground with that until at least a year or two from now. If that goes, we'll see.
Fingers crossed, yeah. So your focus right now is on Advanced Tech and the Advanced Tech podcast as well, which you actually set up in 2017, am I right?
Yes.
Now, why did you set that up?
So how I got into this space, I was a co-host for Vancouver Tech podcast for about 6 months. So Drew and James started that, I think in 2015 or 2014 even. Actually, I think it was 2015. And the idea was it was a weekly show, and we talked to people around Vancouver, usually CTOs, developers, designers, people working on some cool things. There was a news component, so we'd always talk about what was happening for meetups and things events that you should be making sure that you're at. It was about an hour-long show, and weekly format. So I did that for about 6 months, and I was always trying to get Drew to expand a little bit, but he was very focused on wanting to be only Vancouver. In Canada, the epicenter of, the epicenter tends to be of anything really, tends to be in Toronto. And Vancouver is a really cool, unique environment. I mean, we've been called Silicon Valley North. We've been called Hollywood North. There's a lot of really interesting, technical, very talented people out here. And I think that's one of the reasons why he wanted to keep the show focused just on Vancouver. But in the emerging tech space, globally, you see expertise distributed globally. So that was one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to have my own show. I did have a co-host for about a year. He's actually the founder and CEO of Adapt Tech Group, and he's been focusing mostly on his company over the last couple of years. So the last couple of years, it's been me driving the show, from everything from content to reaching out to people to producing episodes. So it's a lot of work, but actually, it's a lot of fun.
I know for a fact it's a lot of work. I can really give you a testimonial for that one. But that grounding, starting out in the Vancouver Tech podcast, gave you that flavour, didn't it, of how useful a podcast can be in running alongside a business?
Well, definitely. And I mean, people are... I'm not quite sure what I want to say about podcasting. It's nice to be able to get that snippet of information. So I was a longtime listener to Tim Ferris' podcast, and I really liked how he had, he brought in experts from around the world, and he sort of broke down the barrier of when you're first starting out in your career, you've got your idea of your heroes and your archetypes, and, if I could just be at that level someday, that would be amazing. And he essentially took people at that level and brought them to you. And I mean,
Yes.
To me, that's the power of any kind of digital media or medium, be it video, be it podcasting, or in-person interviewing. So being able to feel like you're hearing firsthand from people that have built some amazing things, that's just so cool.
Yes, and that simplifying of very complex things, because let's face it, you work in emerging technology. It's stuff that people don't tend to read about on a daily basis. And I think the advantage, you might agree, in having a podcast and writing regularly is to break down that information to something more people can understand.
Definitely. That's definitely something that, in the Bitcoin space in particular, and artificial intelligence, it's people are kind of intimidated by Bitcoin at first. They think, oh, that's just, the money on the internet that criminals use, which is completely, the furthest from the truth that it could be. It's the first hard money, the first money really that we've had that's based on any value since we've come off the gold standard. So being able to explain what Bitcoin is in technical terms and in ways where, somebody who doesn't have the technical background can understand it. It's been one of the true pleasures of the show is getting to, having people that are, they're either core developers or they're very involved in the protocol somehow or building companies around it somehow. And they're really trying to move things forward. So you're getting I guess insider's perspective isn't necessarily the right word, but you kind of are. You're hearing from people that are actually, on the front lines building things.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and your background is also in project management as well, isn't it?
That's where I started.
Yeah, so where did you get this experience then?
So I started out when I was still finishing my degree at the University of British Columbia, is where I actually got into emerging tech. So one of the things, I was an analyst in the Faculty of Science, and one of my mandates was to look at emerging tech and kind of the adoption curve. So essentially, let's see, for example, one of the things we were looking at was a 3D printer, and this is 2003. So they were big and clunky. They were very expensive.
I can imagine.
It was definitely way, way too early for commercial adoption, really even. So it's still kind of in the early phase. And the idea was to look at new tech and see how it could potentially be utilized in the education environment, and at what point would we want to get on board. So that's how I got into emerging technology. Project management, I just kind of fell into. I got into a contract right out of university, working for Best Buy. I think that was my first one. And I just kind of built from there. I did my PMP training, and project management's interesting, but it's also pretty boring. It's a skill. I appreciate people that are able to keep things on track. I can. I'm very good when it comes to motivating teams. There was one company I literally tripled the productivity of the team to meet a deadline.
Yeah.
So that was fun. But for me, it's much more interesting to dive into what motivates somebody to do something, and what's next. Not so much keeping things on track now, but where are we going with this? What's the overall arc? That I find deeply interesting.
It's funny how many people I actually talk to, particularly entrepreneurs, that say they fell into something. It's so common to hear that. It's very rare that I talk to someone who said, well, this is what I wanted to do at university. This is what I'm doing now. This is what I'll be doing over the next 10 years. But a lot more people say, well, I fell into project management, or I fell into, working as a producer at the BBC or whatever. It seems that luck and plays an important role, as well as, guiding ourselves in our career. Luck or luck of the draw plays such a big role in where we end up and how we apply those skills to our future positions.
Luck is preparation and timing. So making sure that you're open to opportunities and making sure that you're going out and actively seeking connections with people. And making sure that you're at conferences. Of course, we can't do that now, but which is really unfortunate. It is nice that there are still digital meetups. And what's been really interesting about this whole lockdown, pandemic and lockdown, is the emergence of VR. So I've been getting quite into VR lately, and it's really cool. It's a very immersive experience. I like the fact that you can pick different avatars. You can be different people. It's really, really interesting. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, your skill set actually includes skills you might commonly associate with media professionals, such as writing and audio production. So are these skills you've actively worked on to help promote your career in project management, or do you find yourself absorbing these skills as you go along?
So I've always written. I started writing, when was I? Probably 14 or 15, and just playing around with things. I started out writing poetry, which you learn pretty early on. Nobody wants to read poetry.
And it doesn't pay very well either.
It doesn't. It was an avenue of self-expression. And, I think words can convey such power, and the ability to wrap something up so that it's accessible yet still interesting and compelling. There's something really cool about that. So I've always enjoyed playing with words as a medium. It's something I've just kind of always done as a side hobby. Audio production I learned for the podcast. So I produce things in Audacity. I'm just learning video editing right now. I've recently started video episodes on the podcast. Not all of them. Sometimes we have a guest on who wants to maintain privacy, so we just throw up an avatar. And sometimes we'll have video for that.
Obviously people come on podcasts and go on other people's videos and be interviewed as a platform for sharing ideas and world-changing ideas and just for fun sometimes. But a lot of it is for self-promotion, and it really works, in my opinion anyway. How much of what you do is to help promote you and help promote your business? So
with the podcast, it's bigger than just me. And I think anything that has any true value, it's more than just, self-promotion and, promoting and bringing on sponsors and advertising and everything like that. What I really want with the podcast is I want it to be a platform for people to be able to share and explain how they're creating the world that they want to live in. So it's really as simple as that. So when it comes to promotion, I definitely don't promote as much as I should. I need to be doing that more. I currently have...
It's hard work, isn't it?
It is hard work. And I kind of think that the work should speak for itself. And, I could hire a PR firm to get my name out there and get the show's name out there. But I kind of think building that organically is more authentic. And, the people that truly listen to the show... I want people that are listening and engaged, and they enjoy hearing, new shows. And it's not about like, oh, what's cool and new. It's like, oh, I really, I want to hear that person's perspective on this, and I've been wanting to know about this. And it's just, I don't know. Promotion's like a double-edged sword. It's like something you have to do. I'm also, nobody believes me when I say it, but I'm very deeply introverted. And I think a lot of people that are in a creative profession are as well. Yeah. Even though we seem comfortable on stage or comfortable on camera, it's almost like I go into a different world when I'm on camera or engaged in an interview. And it's not about me. It's about really putting the focus on the person I'm speaking with. And I think the best interviewers do that. They don't make it about themselves. They don't, try to inject all of their viewpoints. They really try to bring the best out of the guest that they're speaking with.
Well, introverts are known for listening.
Yeah, we are. 100%.
And I think I like that differentiation you just said there about, introverts can still appear on stage. I think there's a misconception that introverts are all shy people, and it's not. It's that we choose to not be in the limelight most of the time. And it's very different from shyness because I'm also introverted. I don't hide behind a microphone. I just enjoy it more, and I like to listen to other people's stories. And I think you sound like a similar sort of person.
Thanks. Yeah, it's. I've always heard, I'm a good listener, and I'm one of those people that people tell things to. I probably shouldn't say that, but I've so many times growing up and over the course of my career, I've heard, I probably shouldn't say this, but, or I feel I can trust you. So.
Well, I think the podcasting side of things as well, you tend to, as a medium for sharing information, you tend to get a lot more across, don't you? I have noticed that you're writing less, and I don't think it's a coincidence anyway that there's more audio output from you. And I listen to Sam Harris. I don't know if you do, but he has run a very successful podcast for a number of years now, and he's writing less. And he says it's because I can get so much more information across in 2 hours of talking with someone than actually writing that book over a number of months and hoping someone buys it. Do you have the similar approach to whether you blog or whether you put something out as audio?
Yeah, each medium has its, I guess I want to say
strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and usefulness, really. It really depends what you're trying to do. Do you want people to feel like they're connecting to somebody and getting an explanation and kind of that inside view? Then if you do, then you probably want to be using, audio or video. Video is incredibly powerful. Sometimes being able to, the person being able to see the other person on the other side and hear the words, that can be a really powerful message. Some people prefer to kind of more passively listen or, listen to a podcast while they're going out for a run or driving or commuting. When it comes to written media, so I just recently published or had an article published in Citadel 21, which is a really awesome new cypherpunk magazine zine that Hodlonaut and Bitcoin Katia put out. And so I was featured in volume 3. It's a monthly zine that features pretty high signal content versus noise. So you've got some, very curated articles. There's always there seems to be a bit of a theme. There's some cool artwork, and it's everything from, short articles to longer interviews to graphic novel type content. It's very cool. Phoenix is the article that I wrote, and it's kind of short, but what it was, I was compelled to write it, and it's kind of it's a critique of everything that I think collectively we're sort of all feeling is maybe wrong with the world. And I shouldn't generalize. I shouldn't say that, but to me it seems like there's just so many things that, like, everything is so upside down, and everything that I grew up believing is now dangerous to believe, which is crazy. Yeah. And the very thought that you can be, having thoughts of your own is now considered a hate crime. I mean, that's just we're literally living in 1984.
In George Orwell, yeah, absolutely.
And it's horrible. Yeah. So Phoenix is really, I talk a lot about what's going on, and I just give a factual observation of, I start out saying, I know it's 7 p.m. or 1900 because, I can hear the nightly cheer for the frontline workers. And that in itself is interesting, but we can't, we're not willing to pay a fair wage for frontline workers because we want to save costs. But, we can cheer for them every night and, have DJs play sets and other things. It's so backward, right?
You've piqued my interest. I really want to read this now. I'm going to I'll be looking for it after this call.
It's short. I don't hold anything back. A lot of times when I write stuff, I kind of hold back a little bit. But with this article, it's everything I think, and I really don't care if I'm going to be judged for it. So how I close on that is I talk a little bit about Bitcoin and how it's the cure for all the collective madness that's going on right now.
just said something about speaking your mind or sharing what you think others might not want to hear. And I enjoyed an article you wrote. We're going back to 2018 now, and it was called Stop Apologising, a Leadership How-To. And I just thought it was so straightforward. It's the sort of thing that we tend to write about every now and again, and you wonder whether anyone's actually paying any attention. But it has a lot of really common sense tips about leadership. So you obviously have a strong opinion about leadership as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about where you're coming from with that?
Sure. So leadership, I was lucky enough that I had some leadership training early on in life. I was very independent from a very, very early age. I kind of had to be. And luckily I had some good teachers and good examples. I was able to also get into fitness training at the time. So that really helped kind of shape the discipline that I needed in my life and kind of give me goals and things like that. So leadership is, it's all about, gosh, how do I break down leadership?
Where do you start?
One of the principles I like is starting at absolute zero. And what I mean by that is breaking down all of the things that kind of hold you back, all of the self-defeating thoughts and beliefs, and just really like wiping the slate clean and starting fresh. And then from there, setting the intention of what is it that I want to do. You can't think positive and achieve your goals. You've got to put in the work. It's important to have an optimistic viewpoint, but really a lot of it is about, looking 10 years into the future. And if I could be living my ideal life, what would I be doing? Taking that, working backward, and then achieving it. And really leadership is about, a lot of it is about fortitude. And, being the example that you want to see, and also realizing that if you're going to take a leadership role, you're also going to be, kind of a guiding light for others. So you have to make sure that you're authentic in what you're doing, and you don't give up. Any true leader leads from behind. So making sure that the entire group is taken care of. Not so much in a caretaking way, but in a way where they're empowered, where they don't feel like you're above anything, and that, that you truly give a shit about what happens. Yeah. Sorry, I probably shouldn't swear.
No, not at all. It's free reign here. It's a British podcast.
Yeah. Any true leader should be able to work anywhere in the organization and still be effective. And I think, I look at CEOs that I respect and admire and leaders that I respect and admire, and they're the ones that have kind of started from the bottom and worked their way up, and they have deep knowledge and they have, empathy. And those are really important qualities. Yeah.
Now, I know COVID-19 has kind of put a halt to all the conference work, and I know you are a conference speaker as well, and you mainly talk about AI and emerging tech. Do you talk about leadership at conferences?
I'm going to start talking more about that. So, yes, I have a couple talks that I'm working on. Yeah, eventually, yes, I would like to talk more about that. I don't know if I'll ever get to the point where I want to write a book, maybe. I've been kind of playing around with that. It's a ton of work. And I'd rather just focus on sort of experience and experiential endeavors.
Yeah, talking to those experts in AI. So what role do you think AI might play in light of COVID-19 over the next couple of years, perhaps? Is it an opportunity to actually double down on some of the emerging tech that we haven't explored in as much depth as we could have?
Yes, I think. Anytime the world is kind of distracted and panicked is the perfect opportunity to really double down on something that you're deeply interested in. One of the positive things about going through this lockdown is so many people have taken the time to, brush up on their knowledge, read more, get more into things, develop hobbies. So I think that's good. Not everyone has had the opportunity to do that, and sometimes it's hard to do that, especially if you're working in isolation. But I think it's very important. So where I see AI going, gosh, right now we're kind of early on. Like artificial intelligence, or synthetic intelligence, as I like calling it, is it's basically just advanced machine learning right now. Mm. And where we're going to see a truly intelligent system emerge is where you're able to train a system and it's able to learn something novel beyond what you've taught it. So if you're feeding raw information into a system and asking it to look at, determine if this is a cat or not a cat, then if it is able to learn something else or apply that knowledge some other unexpected way, then I think that's where it gets really interesting. One of the problems with AI is there's a lot of bias that we introduce into our system. So there was a talk that I gave at Nicholas Badminton's Dark Futures probably about 2 years ago. And I was talking about the dark side of big data and essentially how bias can be introduced. So you have to be really careful that you're not introducing bias into your data sets. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can protect against that, but it's a very subtle thing too. So if you're finding that, everything is predicting something and it seems like it's, like, for example, you look at the Facebook bots that came out, and it's widely cited in media that, Facebook bots were like all of a sudden racist.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
Right, but a lot of that is just a recursion of data going through and going through. It's almost like what you see on, if you watch something on YouTube that's like it has a very strong viewpoint, then it's going to recommend videos and maybe take you down a path that like 2 or 3 videos, are fine. And then the 4th video is like, whoa, what am I watching? Right?
Yeah, the dark rabbit hole, right?
Well, and I mean, it's just, it's a tendency for things to turn into extremes, right?
Yeah,
and so I think that's something we have to guard for in any system that we're creating. But AI is very, I don't know, it's such a fascinating thing.
It is, and I've read about the argument, in AI, because I read a lot about AI as well. In AI, it's easy to build something hurried and flawed than it is to build something safe and reliable, which takes a little bit longer. But it's not going to stop the hurried and flawed ones from perhaps coming out first, and that may affect, you almost create AI to fix the AI that was built before it, and models of AI in various industries and various models. I mean, right now AI is so inherent in financial services and financial technology, but it can be used in so many different ways, can't it?
Well, it really can be. And I mean, it comes down to data and just really fast processing of data. I mean, essentially that's all machine learning is a machine that's, able to take vast volumes of data and process it very quickly. When it gets to the point where it seems almost human-like, I mean, I don't think we have the technical capacity just yet, but I think we're very close. And one of the interesting things I find when it comes to, so you've got AI, which is basically, hard machine learning, and then you've got the concept of AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. And this is typically what Hollywood gives gives us as the example of, the scary AI taking over. Exactly, right? So there's the concept of sentience in AGI and creating the machine that can think. And I think that's the really interesting part about AI. It's scary for a lot of people because we've been kind of scared away from, if the best stories are fear-based, right? Because it taps into a really deep part of our psyche.
That primal,
Exactly. And so if you want to sell tickets, create a story that has some aspect of fear and make it go out of control, and you've got a blockbuster, right? Yeah. But when you look at the truth of something, I don't think it's... Could it happen that way? Sure. I mean, there's always every possibility available. Will it likely happen that way? I don't think so. I really don't. I'm much more of an optimist when it comes to artificial intelligence and the possibility of AGI. I don't know. I think the field of robotics in AI, AGI or synthetic intelligence or whatever you want to call it, the concept of embodiment, I think, is a necessary precondition of having a mind. And by that, by having a robot body, you can interact with the world. And I really think it's the interaction, it's the senses that feed back that information to the system. Like, you touch something and it's hot. Oh, okay. So you develop, it's essentially like how a toddler would learn. You develop that instinct, don't touch the stove because it's hot, but sometimes you have to touch it in order to realize that, oh, okay, that's why I don't do that. So I think that feedback that you get from your environment, I think, is a necessary precondition to having consciousness. If AGI does develop in robots, we're really going down a rabbit hole. I love it. if that does happen, is that a necessary condition thereon or therein? Like, can a machine just escape into a mind or a hive mind consciousness? I think that's entirely possible.
Yeah. Gosh, we did fall down a rabbit hole. I mean, this podcast is about media, but I suppose we can link. If you link the creative fields, I love talking to creative people, and I suppose there are certain people in creative industries thinking, "Am I going to be replaced by AI in 10 years' time? Am I going to be able to collect a decent pension at some point? Will a robot be hosting these podcasts for me, etc., etc.?" But there's an optimism behind that as well, is that there's so many more opportunities to learn how it can help us. I notice you're learning code. Have you been learning code in lockdown?
I have been a little bit. I've taken a coding boot camp. I got a little bit overwhelmed at the beginning with some of the setup, so I stopped it. But I am kind of trying to go through it on my own. It was just an accelerated path. So I'm learning Python, and I did learn Java before. I know some basic like HTML and CSS and some command line. But I think it's important to always be leveling up and to always be learning your next skills.
Well, what do you do to relax? Let's move away from the conference speaking right now and podcast production. What do you do to relax? I notice you're very passionate about fitness, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. So one of the things I'm particularly proud of, I'm part of Team Satoshi, which is a bunch of Bitcoiners that get together, and somebody coined the term Fitcoiner, which I thought was really cool. So there was a live stream, I think it was Tonebase's live stream, and I noticed in the comments somebody said, "Oh, Fitcoiner, that's cool." I was like, that's a great term. I don't know who it was, so I can't attribute the term properly, but yeah, fitness has always been important. When I think I was 12 or 13 when I first got into fitness. I joined like a local gym, and then a year later I joined like a proper bodybuilding gym. And I was like fully training for, I guess not competition, but I was thinking about that. For me, fitness is someplace where I can go in and I can apply effort in a safe space, and I can see results. And it's not dependent or reliant on anyone. It's it builds strength in me. I'm able to refine my methods and kind of experiment on myself, kind of Tim Ferris style.
And as you said earlier as well, it was that discipline thing, isn't it? You took up fitness, and it helps discipline our minds sometimes, doesn't it? Or at least depressurize certain aspects of thinking.
Well, it really does. And I mean, physical activity, I think, is so important. And, even if you're going through like an injury, or if you've got some kind of movement of, I guess, challenges, it's important to always, it's about keeping your blood flowing and, making sure that your muscles don't atrophy. And I think a healthy mind is always found in a healthy body, almost always. And I think I just think it's such a fundamental thing that, we should be encouraging this in kids as they're growing up. To make sure that they're doing something physical, whether it be dance or sports or, some kind of training or martial arts, just to build that discipline that, no matter what's going on, this is always something you can come back to and always something where you'll see results, especially when the world is so chaotic. Being able to still accomplish something when everything's falling apart, I think is really key.
I very much enjoyed our conversation. I'm really happy that you've been able to join me this morning. And I wonder if you can help listeners get in touch with you. How do we find you, Alexandra?
Well, probably the best place, my favorite medium is probably Twitter. So I'm at Alexandra933 on Twitter and on most platforms. I have a new website. It's advancedtech.io. And I may change the domain for that, but that's where I'm currently parked. The podcast is Advanced Tech Podcast, or sorry, what is it? It's Advanced Tech Media or Advanced Tech Podcast. It's actually advancedtechmedia.org.
Thank you so much, Alexandra.
You bet. Thanks, Shaun. I appreciate it.
That was Alexandra Moxin, and you can find her on Twitter at Alexandra933 and on most social platforms Her website is, for now, advancedtech.io, and the podcast is advancedtechmedia.org. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favourite podcast platform, or simply share it with someone you know who will enjoy it. And you can take a look at my own website at shaunweston.co.uk for more information about me. In the meantime, stay tuned. There's more to come.